Did you ever wonder what really went on behind that jolly snowman and his magic hat? Frosty the Snowman, 1969, wasn't just a holiday cartoon. It was a small miracle of voices, drawings, and sheer luck that shaped a generation's Christmas memories. But behind the cheer and laughter, how many strange twists made Frosty come to life? "Happy birthday!" was almost lost to the cutting room floor. In early drafts, producers thought Frosty's cheerful exclamation was too childish and might make older kids roll their eyes instead of laugh. The debate lasted days, with executives arguing that the scene already sold the magic without needing words at all. But the animators and director Jules Bass fought to keep it, believing that one simple phrase captured the pure joy of life better than any elaborate dialogue. When voice actor Jackie Vernon finally delivered the line in his soft, almost bashful tone, everyone in the studio knew it worked. It turned a clay lump of snow into something alive, a voice you could love. To this day, that single shout of "Happy Birthday" defines Frosty more than his corncob pipe or button nose ever could. Jimmy Durante's final big performance came with a snowman's smile. The raspy-voiced entertainer, famous for his piano routines and gravel laugh, was already in his late 70s when he took the role of narrator. Durante's health was failing, and many of his friends said he accepted the job not for money, but for legacy. He recorded the entire narration in one long session, punctuated by that unmistakable laugh and his old-fashioned warmth. It gave the special a human heartbeat, something playful, but also tender. When the show first aired, viewers didn't realize they were hearing the last new performance from one of entertainment's golden era giants. His Frosty the Snowman became a goodbye disguised as a bedtime story, his voice fading into holiday memory as softly as falling snow. Rankin and Bass used Japanese animation studios when most American companies still refused to. The entire cartoon was hand-drawn overseas at Mushi Production, a Tokyo studio founded by Osamu Tezuka, the father of modern anime. It was an unusual partnership in 1969, when US studios typically kept everything domestic. But Rankin and Bass had already seen Japan's growing skill through earlier projects, and the cost savings were undeniable. The collaboration gave Frosty the Snowman its distinct, fluid look. The soft edges, delicate line work, and warm pastel palettes that felt almost storybook-like. It marked one of the earliest examples of American Christmas animation being shaped by Japanese artistry. Many of the animators went on to define the anime boom of the 1970s, meaning Frosty's gentle waddle shares DNA with characters who later filled Japanese cinema screens. A small winter special opened a door to a whole new era of animation exchange between two worlds. The snowman's melting scene shocked CBS censors when they first saw it. The network worried the image of Frosty slowly collapsing into a puddle would traumatize younger children. One executive even demanded that the sequence be rewritten to show him instantly reforming, as if nothing had happened. But director Arthur Rankin stood his ground, insisting that loss, even gentle, temporary loss, was part of the story's heart. The moment was carefully redrawn, emphasizing Karen's tears and the promise of return instead of the act of melting itself. When it finally aired, it moved audiences rather than upsetting them. Children wrote letters to CBS asking if Frosty really came back, proof that the emotion landed exactly as intended. In a decade known for optimism, it dared to remind families that even magic has its quiet winters. Frosty's design changed dramatically from the song's version. When production began, early sketches showed him as a thin, almost human figure with long arms and narrow shoulders. The team quickly realized this design looked unsettling rather than friendly, more ghost than snowman. Animator Paul Coker Jr. reimagined him as rounder, softer, and a bit clumsy-looking, like the kind of snowman a real child might make on a windy December morning. His small eyes and oversized hat were drawn to make him appear constantly surprised, capturing that mix of innocence and wonder. Even the way he walked was planned, slow, deliberate, like someone who had just learned how legs work. That redesign turned Frosty from a winter prop into a character children could trust. Without it, the story might have melted away long before reaching our hearts. Karen's character was added late in production, almost as an afterthought. The original song never mentioned a little girl, just a snowman who came to life and said goodbye. But screenwriter Romeo Muller knew that without someone to care for Frosty, there could be no real emotional center. Karen became that heart. She wasn't just there to move the story. She gave Frosty something worth saving, someone who believed in him without question. Her red coat and pigtails were designed to make her stand out against the white snow, a symbol of warmth in a cold world. Many viewers remember her desperate train ride and tearful goodbye more vividly than any of Frosty's jokes. She turned a children's song into a friendship story that could make adults cry. The script for Frosty the Snowman was written in just 1 week. Rankin and Bass almost made Frosty the Snowman in stop motion instead of traditional animation. Coming off the success of Rudolph and the Little Drummer Boy, the studio was famous for its puppets and miniature sets. The initial plan was to sculpt Frosty as a real model and film him frame by frame using their signature animagic technique. But when they realized how much faster and cheaper 2D production would be, they made the switch. The change allowed for smoother storytelling and more expressive faces, something that clay figures couldn't easily achieve. Still, the team borrowed lighting tricks from their stop-motion work, giving the cartoon a soft, glowing quality that made it feel half real. It's funny to think that the world's most famous drawn snowman almost had wires in his back and snowflakes made of cotton. The school scene was based on a real Vermont town where one of the art directors grew up. He brought in photographs of small churches, picket fences, and frozen ponds from his childhood winters to guide the background team. Those quiet streets and red brick buildings became the foundation of Frosty's world. The design captured an America that felt honest and simple, the kind of place where kids still built snow forts and waved at neighbors. Each painted backdrop carried hints of old-fashioned New England charm. Warm lights in frosty windows, crooked lampposts, and puffs of smoke from tiny chimneys. It was less a fantasy and more a memory put on paper. Viewers recognized their own hometowns in those frames, which is why Frosty still feels like he could have come from just down the road. June Foray's uncredited voice work might be the special's quietest mystery. The legendary actress behind Rocky the Flying Squirrel and countless cartoon icons reportedly lent her voice to one of the background characters, possibly one of the school children. Her name never appeared in the credits, a surprising omission given her fame in animation circles. Rankin and Bass never confirmed it, but sound historians and fans swear they hear her unmistakable tone during group scenes. If true, it means one of the greatest voices in history slipped into Frosty the Snowman as a hidden gift, speaking a single line and vanishing again. It's a fitting secret for a story about fleeting magic, a voice you might catch only once if you listen closely enough. The Professor Hinkle model was not born from imagination, it was borrowed. His angular face, oversized top hat, and wiry body actually came from a serial commercial storyboard that the Rankin and Bass team had sitting around the office. The studio had bought advertising concepts to use as design inspiration, and someone noticed that one sketch of a bumbling salesman looked perfect for the story's villain. With a few adjustments, a longer nose, sharper chin, and darker colors, the character transformed into the unlucky magician who loses his hat. The recycled design gave Hinkle an oddly familiar look, like the type of person you might see on television in another context. It was a cost-saving move, but one that accidentally created one of holiday animation's most distinctive antagonists. The cereal brand was never credited, though you could say their forgotten pitch became one of the strangest cameos in cartoon history. Real coal was used to make the sound of Frosty's footsteps. Foley artists were told to make the crunch of snow feel heavier, more alive, so they poured chunks of coal onto a studio floor and rubbed them together in rhythm. When they layered the recordings with faint wind noises, the result sounded perfectly like boots pressing into packed snow. The irony, of course, was that coal, the symbol of naughty children, helped bring a kind snowman to life. The process filled the studio with black dust, forcing the engineers to wear masks while recording. Decades later, fans still comment on how natural Frosty's footsteps sound for an animated figure. They were hearing not snow, but stone and soot, the work of artists who knew that magic often hides in the simplest materials. The music for Frosty the Snowman was recorded in the basement of a New York City radio station. CBS could not spare studio time at their main facility, so the crew borrowed a low-ceilinged recording room used for jingles and advertisements. The space smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and varnish, but its close walls gave the orchestra a warm, almost echo-free sound. Every reel of tape they used had already been recorded on once before. The engineers wiped it clean to save money. The musicians played their parts in small clusters, often layering sections one by one to mimic a full orchestra. When the final playback filled the cramped basement, the producer smiled and said it sounded like Christmas in a teacup. That makeshift setup gave the soundtrack its charming intimacy, not grand or polished, but as cozy as a radio broadcast heard beside a winter fire. The North Pole ticket animation glitch flashes by so quickly that most viewers never notice it. In one scene, when Frosty shows the ticket to Karen, a single frame displays the text completely backward, a mirror image of the words. The mistake happened when one animation cell was photographed in reverse order, something that was hard to detect in the rush of frame-by-frame filming. The editors spotted it later, but decided to leave it in because fixing it would have meant reshooting the entire segment. It remains visible on every broadcast and home release, a tiny flaw preserved like an accidental signature of its time. For a show built on magic and imperfections, that backward ticket feels oddly fitting. It reminds us that even in handmade wonders, a little human error is part of the charm. Frosty's eyes change shape midway through the special, and once you notice, you cannot unsee it. Early in production, two teams worked on different sequences using separate model sheets. One version gave him round, soft eyes, while the other added sharper oval shapes to make expressions easier to animate. Somewhere along the line, the reference pages were switched, and scenes began arriving at CBS with mismatched Frosties. By the time the directors realized, deadlines made reanimation impossible. Instead, they simply adjusted the lighting and camera angles to disguise the inconsistency. The result is subtle: a snowman who looks slightly different from shot to shot, as if the magic inside him keeps shifting. It is one of those unintentional quirks that make the special feel alive, imperfect, and human in all the right ways. The credits contain a misspelled name that has haunted fans for decades. One of the assistant animators, a young artist named Joseph Roman, saw his surname printed as Ronan in the final broadcast. The typo happened when the title cards were typeset by hand and reviewed too quickly to catch every detail. He later joked that it made him sound Irish instead of Italian, but the mistake quietly bothered him for years. In interviews, he admitted that his family taped the broadcast and pointed it out every Christmas. Rankin and Bass promised to fix it for later releases, but the original card stayed. That single misplaced letter is still frozen in time, proof that even the most magical projects carry small scars of human oversight. The theme song for Frosty the Snowman was recorded in just one take. The musicians gathered in a tiny studio in Midtown Manhattan, expecting a long night of multiple runs. But as soon as the first note rang out, something clicked. The tempo, the cheer, the bounce of every instrument. By the end of the take, the producer was grinning, telling everyone to stop because they had already caught lightning in a bottle. They played again only for safety, but the team agreed that the first version had the warmth no retake could match. That single performance became the theme millions still hum today, raw and joyful with the sound of a band that did not know they were making history. Jimmy Durante recorded his narration in a single afternoon. By that point, his health had begun to decline, and doctors limited his work hours. He arrived at the studio wearing his signature smile, carrying a thermos of tea, and joked that he would finish before the snow melted outside. The sound engineers said the room fell silent each time he spoke, as if everyone knew they were hearing something historic. Durante's voice cracked slightly in one take, and instead of redoing it, the producer kept the raw version. That small imperfection made the performance human. It was one of those rare sessions where no one wanted to leave when the workday ended. Between lines, he rested his voice and sipped quietly, while the engineers adjusted microphones to suit his gravelly tone. Even through fatigue, he brought every sentence to life, ad-libbing small phrases that the producers kept in the final cut. He completed the entire story before sunset, signing off with his famous laugh. It would be one of his last recording sessions before retirement, and perhaps that is why his voice sounds so full of warmth, like someone waving goodbye but smiling as they do it. The narrator's hat was modelled after Jimmy Durante's real fedora. Durante had worn the same black felt hat for years during his stage performances, calling it his lucky lid. The design team loved how it tilted slightly to one side, giving him a look of casual charm. They asked him to mail it to the studio so animators could study its curves and creases. Durante sent it wrapped in newspaper with a note that read, "Handle with care. It knows more jokes than I do." The hat arrived with decades of stage dust clinging to it, which the animators used as reference for texture and lighting. The hat itself wasn't perfect. One side of the brim drooped slightly, which the animators decided to keep because it made Frosty look more playful. During breaks, crew members reportedly used it as a lucky charm, tapping it before recording sessions. Its small dents and faded ribbon became tiny relics of that shared superstition, a physical reminder that belief, not design, made Frosty come alive. After production wrapped, the hat disappeared for decades until a collector found it at an estate sale tied to an old CBS employee. Today, it sits in a private archive, carefully preserved in a glass case. The brim is slightly warped, and the ribbon has faded from black to charcoal grey, but it still carries a quiet magic. It is one of the few physical remnants of a cartoon world that mostly existed on film cells and imagination. So before the last snowflake falls, tell us which Frosty fact melted your heart the most. Give that like button a little holiday cheer and subscribe so the magic never melts away. The narrator's hat was modelled after Jimmy Durante's real fedora. Durante had worn the same black felt hat for years during his stage performances, calling it his lucky lid. The design team loved how it tilted slightly to one side, giving him a look of casual charm. They asked him to mail it to the studio so animators could study its curves and creases. Durante sent it wrapped in newspaper with a note that read, "Handle with care. It knows more jokes than I do." The hat arrived with decades of stage dust clinging to it, which the animators used as reference for texture and lighting. That tiny detail, a bit of real-world grit, helped make the cartoon's charm feel oddly authentic. Using it as reference, they sketched the narrator's silhouette, making sure the brim always flopped forward just enough to hide a wink. Durante later joked that it was the only time in his life his hat got top billing. In truth, it became part of his legacy. A simple piece of clothing turned into an animated trademark that carried his personality across generations. A lost scene once showed Frosty wandering through a bustling department store. The storyboards, later found in a Rankin and Bass archive, reveal a charming sequence of him marveling at toys, mannequins, and window displays. Children were meant to chase after him while store clerks fainted in the background, all set to a jaunty reprise of the main theme. One panel even showed Frosty trying on a scarf in a mirror and accidentally knocking over an entire display of ornaments. The animators loved the physical comedy, but knew the sequence would take weeks to finish. When the production budget tightened, the scene was reluctantly shelved, its laughter left on paper instead of film. But as production costs grew and the special's runtime neared its limit, the sequence was cut. The animation team never finished inking the drawings, and the idea melted away like Frosty himself. CBS aired Frosty the Snowman alongside Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer commercials in its earliest broadcasts, creating a shared holiday universe long before studios talked about crossovers. The network realized both specials came from the same creative team, so they leaned into the connection, airing Rudolph-themed ads between Frosty segments. Some even teased that the two characters might meet one day, though the idea was more marketing dream than production plan. The jingles and promos used the same cozy narrator's tone, blending the two worlds into a single Christmas tradition. The shared broadcasts made families feel like these stories lived in the same snowy world, just a sleigh ride apart. Parents loved the familiarity, and children would write letters to CBS asking when Rudolph would help Frosty next year. The network, amused and flattered, saved dozens of those letters, proof that the magic worked better than any commercial pitch could. It worked perfectly. Audiences began to treat the specials as siblings, not separate shows. In living rooms across America, children watched Frosty's snow melt while still humming Rudolph's song from the commercial break. It was smart television, blurring lines between storytelling and advertising without anyone noticing. Decades later, viewers still remember those combined broadcasts as a single warm memory of holiday wonder, back when one snowy night on CBS felt endless. The same studio that made Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer also built Frosty's snowy world, and the fingerprints of that earlier classic are everywhere. Rankin and Bass reused several of Rudolph's background paintings, sound effects, and even snippets of incidental music. The echoing jingle bells when Frosty first opens his eyes once belonged to Santa's sleigh in the 1964 film. Even the whistling wind was lifted straight from recordings used in the North Pole scenes. Animators joked that the snow in Frosty had already fallen once before, in Rudolph's world. They saw it not as recycling, but as tradition, a way. To tie every Rankin and Bass special into one continuous Christmas universe, they reused these elements not to save money, but to preserve a feeling that audiences instantly recognized. This kind of creative recycling was not laziness, it was economy. The studio had tight deadlines and smaller budgets each year, so they treated past productions like toolkits. By blending old elements with new designs, they built a familiar winter atmosphere that tied their entire Christmas library together. For longtime fans, those echoes between Rudolph and Frosty became invisible threads, weaving the stories into one connected holiday dream. A 1969 toy line for Frosty the Snowman was cancelled halfway through production, leaving only a few prototypes to tell the tale. Rankin and Bass had planned a full range of plush snowmen, magician hats, and children's scarves labeled Frosty's Friends. But manufacturing delays, combined with the special's rushed release, meant the toys could not hit shelves. In time for Christmas, warehouses ended up with a handful of unfinished dolls and packaging that never saw daylight. Some of those prototypes still had visible stitching marks and half-painted buttons, tiny signs of a dream interrupted. Decades later, a few surfaced on auction sites, fetching thousands from nostalgic collectors. For the artists who worked on them, it was bittersweet proof that even failed ideas can become treasures when time turns them into memory. A few samples were handed to CBS staff as promotional gifts, and collectors later hunted them like buried treasure. Today, fewer than 10 are known to exist. Their fabric yellowed, but still smiling. They are pieces of a forgotten marketing dream, toys meant to turn a television moment into a living room presence. The cancellation kept Frosty from becoming the next Rudolph in merchandising terms, but it also helped preserve his innocence. After all, some magic is better left without a price tag. A Beatles song almost appeared in Frosty the Snowman, and it would have changed the entire mood. During early planning, producers considered licensing Here Comes the Sun to play during the melting scene, symbolizing hope after loss. The idea came from a young music supervisor who thought the gentle melody would soften the sadness. The team even timed storyboards to the song's rhythm, matching the rise of each note to Frosty's final wave. But negotiations with the Beatles' publisher quickly hit a wall. The fee was far beyond what a holiday special could afford. Some staff still say hearing that test reel was the most beautiful moment of the entire project, even if it never left the editing room. But when CBS saw the estimated licensing cost, they immediately declined. The budget simply could not stretch that far, so the team composed an original instrumental cue instead. Still, for one brief meeting, someone imagined a snowman fading under George Harrison's voice, a cross of pop culture and childhood memory that might have become iconic.